week, we have an average of 68 cases in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, which is a 39% decrease in the last 2 weeks.
Wow. Really cool. Yes. Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity, Eleanor. My name is Jada Jackson. I'm currently serving as the Associate Director of Student Engagement here at Queen's University of Charlotte. By identity, I identify as an African American non-binary individual. My pronouns are they, them. I'm about 5'3" in height. And I'm really excited to be here and being part of this conversation. I think something else about my identity that I like to lean into is that I am young, a young professional, and I'm a professional with locks. And I love to be able to highlight that in my professional setting as well, because I think that's definitely a part of my identity.
Thank you so much. So where is home for you right now?
Home for me right now is currently here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Originally, I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, so I didn't come too far right on up the road here to Charlotte.
And where were you living during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, I was here in Charlotte. I actually had just moved from Raleigh to here, and so I moved up here to Charlotte. I started working for maybe about a year, just barely, before COVID came and put me in my apartment here in Charlotte.
So where were you working before Queens?
Before Queens, I was working at a company called Youth Villages as a clinical supervisor, working in schools. So I was an essential worker at that time, working for mental health agencies, working with DJJ and our court systems here in Charlotte.
Thank you.
Yes.
So as you were working and moving to Charlotte, what do you remember about the COVID-19 pandemic?
Man, I think what I remember the most, because being an essential worker, I was still out and having to go and do my day-to-day visits, home visits, sometimes school visits when school started to come back in. And what I remembered the most during that time is how empty the highways are. And if you know, Charlotte is often very busy on the roads, that there are always cars going up and down. And at this time, there was not a single car on the highway. I was the car. And that is really what I remember the absolute most, is just the world felt like it stopped for a minute.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And how did you feel having to be an essential worker and working in the field when everyone else was locked down?
Yes, it was tough. It was really difficult. Safety, health, it was like it was right in front of your face, but you had to be cautious to it because, I was an essential worker. So while this pandemic is going on, this very intense time is going on, and we're having to be so careful with the families or the youth that we are working with, we're having to also balance this unique moment of like, well, what about myself in these times? So it was really hard. There were times that even serving as a supervisor, that I would have to have conversations with my on the ground staff about, is this really sustainable? Is this something that we can do for the health and safety of our own employees, and then for ourselves as well? So it was really hard. There were constant conversations about if we're making the right decision, if we're providing the best support at the time. So all in all, it was tough still working throughout that entire time.
And what do you remember about moving to Charlotte, still being in that pandemic and trying to, you started working at Queens just recently this year. So how was that transition into working here?
Oh man, that transition was a jump. Half of the reason that I was really excited to come to Queens is I was excited to get back in person, because working at my clinical location, when we moved back to in person, we were still kind of hybrid. There are a lot of families that still were not comfortable with us coming to their home, which was understandable. And we were still going through a lot of shifts at the schools, elementary, middle, and high school, that were making shifts between being in person and virtual, depending on the students in their classroom in the COVID cases that broke out. So I was very excited to be able to come here to Queens to get back in person. There were some moments of me like being very nervous as to what that adjustment is like, because we have been virtual for so long, and to come back and then to be in a position where I am helping program and create an experience for students, and to think like, man, we've been inside for 3 years, and what does an experience mean now? So I was like really excited to come to Queens to have that challenge. But also there were some nerves in that, as you know, getting back around a lot of people all the time. And that was definitely an adjustment for myself.
What did you notice about yourself or about your relationships as you were dealing with these kinds of like fears and nerves? Did you notice like relationships changing or strengthening and any of it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good question. I noticed a lot of my relationships were strengthening with my close knit friends, and the relationships that I had with individuals that were we weren't as close, like, you know, we were more kind of casual friends. Some of those kind of started to dwindle off. And what I noticed was that there was intention in my relationships, and what that intention meant. I really learned the importance of caring for my regular relationships just as my romantic relationships, and how that really was life changing for me and life changing for those friendships, those platonic friendships that I had. We were able to really see what it means to nurture this relationship without us seeing each other every week or once a month. And, you know, we haven't seen each other in a year or 6 months. And how do we reconnect? So I really noticed within myself taking a lot more intention in my conversations that I was having with my friends, to check in to see how they're doing, how their families are, how their friends are, how their pets are, you know, really making that intention to check in. And then I also noticed with myself that I became a lot more gentle with myself in giving myself time. I think that's something that COVID taught a lot of us, is that time is oblique. It can seem like you have a lot of time, and it can seem like you have no time. And so I became very intentional with myself about my time. And that's something that I still find very precious, that I have kept since COVID.
So did you find that your friends and your romantic partners were doing the same thing, being more intentional with you as well?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely my friends. Big shout out to my best friends, Brandon and Erica. We call ourselves like the three peas in a pod, because we are always together. It's very rare to catch one of us just without knowing exactly where the other two are, or that they're coming along very soon. And we really tapped into having some more in-depth conversations with one another, like in terms of our mental health, our physical health, our relationships with our other friends or family members. Like we really tapped into even a deeper conversation. And definitely with my partner as well, that, you know, dating over COVID was difficult. You couldn't do the same things that we were doing before. So, you know, when we met before COVID happened, you know, we were going out to restaurants, going and traveling. It was so much that we could do. And then once COVID became present, all of that stopped. And we had to be intentional about, how are we spending time together? How are we connecting? And that really, I think, supported and strengthened those relationships phenomenally.
And what were ways that you found yourself appreciating or feeling loved the most throughout that time?
I think the quality time together. I think that was it. Like I absolutely love spending time with the people that I love. And we could be doing anything. Like I could be doing something that you love and that I probably don't like much, but it's like that quality time, because I'm learning about what you like. I'm understanding why you like it in your own way. And so I think that the quality time is what really gave me back that support and love during those moments. And then there were some times that gift giving came, and I didn't know. I'm being very general, my foundation here of like love languages, but I think that they are important because I'm not a big person on gift giving, but during the pandemic, gift giving became important to me because it was like small things, writing each other notes and letters. When was the last time like you wrote somebody a letter instead of just calling them on the phone? But that became something that was cool, just to kind of write some letters and notes and pass them to my neighbors or stuff like that, because we hadn't seen each other in a while. So that small gift giving became such a time that made you feel like a big hug without having the actual and physical hug present.
Was there a time during the pandemic when any of your close family or friends was affected by COVID?
Yes, absolutely. Let me see. Throughout COVID, I think myself and my family, we lost 3 family members throughout COVID. Some close, some long distance. Some of them were older. We didn't lose any young individuals in that time. I did lose a college friend in that time who was young, which was like shell shocking to me in the moment, because that's when I think COVID really became real for me. It had always been real, but I think it really became like a, oh my gosh, you never know type thing during that moment. And so that we definitely had some effects. My partner actually ended up getting COVID as well during a time. And in the moment, we were not living together and we had to kind of separate for a little bit. And so that was an adjustment to go through that. And so definitely had some direct effects of COVID, both right at home and in my family, and then in my friends as well.
How did those effects carry on now that we're out of the pandemic?
I think I could really lean into my college friend, that we weren't super close, but I knew him a lot around campus. He was such a game changer when it came to campus leadership. Like everybody knew this individual when we were at A&T together. And then he went and graduated and became a teacher for young people. And, I think that is something that sticks with me beyond COVID, because, he had just gotten married. His birthday, as it comes year to year, is just like, wow, this individual is really not here anymore. And their life was taken during a time that many other lives were taken at an untimely moment. And so I think that it sticks with me. His passing sticks with me the most because it highlights to me and reminds me that people of all ages, all backgrounds were affected in this. And as a society, we came together during this time. And it is just so unique to watch us, unfortunately, mourn together during that time. And so I think that's one moment that constantly, I think, kind of follows me from COVID, to remind me that like COVID was here and it was very real and it affected people in a multitude of different ways.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I guess I'm like, these stories are so beautiful and like learning so much. So I guess my question is, as like we're out of this era now,
yeah,
and we're trying to move forward and trying to like get, okay, we want to forget about that. What is the balance between valuing the things that we've learned and moving forward from that era?
Absolutely. Wow, that is a great question. It reminds me of the presentation that I did with my colleagues here at Queens with Rosa Ramirez and Elizabeth Rogers. We recently went to the AAC&U conference to present alongside other college and universities about the social divides and how we are able to pull those together and be a lot more intentional in our programming moving forward. And a big part of that is talking about COVID and how COVID has affected our programming and what that means for us to come out of that while still paying tribute to say like that was a thing. And I think I wouldn't say it's an even balance, but it is a awareness in your balance that you have to be mindful of, because I think we're in a place now in society that we're trying to continue moving forward from the things that COVID has done to us, whether it has been financial, it has been for housing concerns, it has raised our homeless population, increased our mental health concerns that, I think all the things of COVID that we expected and also didn't expect to happen are here and very present. And we can see them, we can touch them, we can name them. And now we're in a place that we're trying to figure out how to move forward and balance those things. And I think that it comes at a place where we can't put complete balance to COVID anymore, because a lot of those protections are gone, like 6 feet. That's gone. That protection of safety, our state and our government, they're not saying that is a mandated thing anymore. So how do we protect or support the person in a public space? And so I think now it is a place of extreme awareness to COVID, and we're kind of moving away from balancing COVID and the COVID precautions now. And so it's a very delicate awareness, I think, that has to take place. And how I see that awareness now is a lot of questions, a lot of wondering, like, as we are respectful in our diversity, equity, and inclusion aspects, I think now we've even moved COVID into some of those precautions too. Like, while we are making sure we are providing diverse and equitable and inclusive settings, are we also creating settings that is respectful to health, respectful to the body? So I think that's now how COVID has propelled and continued to be present right now, where there's a lot more interest in conversations around health and wellness. That's different than general health, wellness, and weight. I think it's a lot different conversation now.
I've noticed the same thing, and I like the trend of that conversation.
Yes, I agree.
So before we started, we wrote down a couple of things about yourself, and one of those was things that you learned during the pandemic. If you're comfortable, what are a couple of those things? Absolutely.
It's funny because we've talked a little bit about the two. The two things that I named was self-support and close connections. So the close connections, we kind of hit on that a little bit. And you asked me, like, what did I learn and what were those moments with my relationships that, like, I can say for sure, COVID increased my connections with people that, one, I probably didn't anticipate. And then also with family members and friends that we were already close, but we just really deepened that connection. And then self-support. Being here in Charlotte by myself, moving up here, starting my career, was like a jump into no land. I had a job coming up here. I got my apartment. A few months later, I finally was able to get my dog that I've always wanted. And I just, really just propelled into my future. And then COVID came and it was like, hold on, sit down for a little bit and just think about life. And that is what it felt like. And so I feel like I had created a new sense of self-support and self-love throughout COVID that sometimes was like a force because you had to sit with some things, and then also was a choice to grow. And so I think those are the two things that I think really came out for me from COVID.
Thank you. Does your dog have separation anxiety?
Oh, gosh. You would not even believe it. It's really scary. He is absolutely a COVID dog, like absolutely. So I really had to, even now, we have to take extreme strides to make sure we take him outside, take him for walks in different areas, because it's like, not used to all the noise, not used to the constant motion and movement. I have a COVID baby.
Thank you so so much for telling us your story. Is there anything as we kind of wrap up that you would like to share about any of this, about your story during the pandemic and your story as it continues developing now?
Well, one, I want to say again, thank you for this opportunity because this is great. Even the activity that we did in starting, I've never really sat and thought so in depth about what COVID did for me. You know, I've done a lot of research and looked around in conversations to what it's done for other people, but to really see what it's done for me has. This is wonderful. So I appreciate this opportunity for this activity. And also, I always want to support individuals and encourage individuals to be an advocate for somebody else other than yourself. Because when I look at the 5 fingers that I had identified within myself as an advocate, queer, a leader, a lover, a friend, that many of these other areas have come by some support or caring from other people around me. And so I always just want to encourage people to be an advocate for something other than yourself that you find important or that you support within somebody else, because you never know how you could change somebody else's life. So that's it. Thank you.